Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to Ecosystem Building Introduction Presentation and Workshop. This is our last in the learning series. Right after this, we will have our meetup, and that's where we end with our 10-week learning series together. So, welcome to the Ecosystem Building module once again. Today's workshop is going to go on for about 90 minutes and it's going to be interactive with um, a workshop towards the end. And then the session is recorded. We will share it in the learning cohort space towards the end of the day. And my name is Roma Patadia. I'm joining from Hubli, a small town close to Bangalore in India. I'm working with the SI Network as program manager at the moment. And Joss Colchester is the founder of the SI Network, joining us from London. Thank you. Joining us from London, he also works as ecosystem builder and community builder with the SI network. And we're super excited to have you all here today, and especially for those who've been with us for all the 5 modules. It was such a great journey so far. Thank you for staying consistent. And for those who did not know what the learning series was, it was a 10-week learning series where we dedicated 2 weeks for each of the modules in the foundations course. And now we are in week 9. So this was also the path to certification, and you could actually click on this and um, look at how to get the certificate. But just in case if you missed the previous events, we have all the recordings here towards the end of the board. You could take a look and um, kind of catch up. And yeah, with that, we have these 5 different guides, which is part of ecosystem building, which is collaborative networks and scaling systems, innovation, value networks, systemic assessment, and investing. So there are 5 guides under ecosystem, and if you click over here, you can access them. So that's about today's session, what it is about. And would like to actually hear from you. How familiar are you with ecosystem building? You could actually hop on the Miro board at this point and let us know by um, picking one of these dots and placing on the horizontal bar between familiar and not familiar. So just sharing the Miro board link in the chat box.
And also maybe on the stickies, what interests you in this area? What encouraged you to join today?
Yes. I hope you're able to access the Miro board. Perfect. Yeah, now I see the space getting filled up. We have somebody who's not familiar and then somebody who's familiar. I think a good mix of people usually create good conversations and questions. So I think it's going to be amazing today. We have somebody saying self-organization, network thinking, and then getting into systems thinking. So this is what people are interested in at the moment. So you could continue filling up these sticky notes and letting us know about your interests and your familiarity with the concept. Meanwhile, I will request Joss to guide us through today's workshop. Over to you, Joss.
Super. Great to be here with you all. And get a chance to talk about ecosystem building. It's a complex and fascinating topic, and we have quite a bit to cover today. Actually, trying to do this in one session is quite a bit. We've also got a bit of a workshop at the end. This really great canvas here that helps you think about the different dimensions to growing an ecosystem of this kind. But first, some ideas to help frame what we're talking about here and why we're talking about it and some of those different dimensions. And what do we mean by ecosystem building? So what was your interest in joining? Getting introduced to systems thinking, what makes ecosystems different? Self-organization, network thinking, network intelligence, trying to bring this into practice, for now using designing for emergence as a starting point, build and sustain ecosystems for thematic clusters in Monterrey, Mexico. Okay, great. And kind of big spread of where you are. So let's all get on the same page for what we're talking about here. Some of what we're going to cover. Why should we take an ecosystem approach? What is systems entrepreneurship? What are the key aspects of a purposeful innovation ecosystem? How do we develop and grow them over time? So that's what we're covering. And let's start with this from Geneva Global. A systems entrepreneur is a personal organization that facilitates a change to an entire ecosystem by addressing and incorporating all the components and actors required to move the needle on a particular issue. So this is what we're trying to do as systems innovators and systems builders. And it entails this idea of an ecosystem. And ecosystems, we have two types of them in the world. One are natural ecosystems, and this is what they look like. And the other ones are human ecosystems, and they have many of the similar kind of underlying dynamics and features, actually. Um, they have all these different entities doing different things. They are all interconnected and interrelated within an overall system. So if we took, this is obviously a natural ecosystem. And if I looked out the window here in London, this city is an ecosystem, and there's many sub-ecosystems that are part of it. For example, the financial ecosystem here is an ecosystem, and it has many different organizations and different actors doing many different things, from the credit raters to the government policymakers to the Bloomberg and the news outlets to the big banks to the pension funds and hedge funds and so on and so forth. And they're all part of this system, the financial system. And they're interconnected and interdependent, and they're performing different functions within that system, and they need each other in different ways, right? The pension funds are needed, and the insurance brokers are needed, and the policymakers, they're all needed, and they all have to work together in some way. They may be competing sometimes, other times they're cooperating. Sometimes there's conflicts, right? Some are trying to eat other ones, like here, this fox is maybe eating this little rodent. Um, and other times they're collaborating in very synergistic ways, like these little micro organisms down here supporting fungi, supporting the roots of the tree to get the nutrients that it needs, and the tree providing the right ecosystem for it to survive in a very symbiotic relationship. We have some species that are not so important in this whole thing, maybe this caterpillar, whereas this bear over here is super important. Maybe like the big banks, right? We know they're systemically important. When they fail, the whole ecosystem collapses, financial ecosystem starts to collapse and credit dries up and so forth. So this is what we're talking about. We say ecosystems. There are many of them out there in the world. If you live in a city, you would have multiple, right? The transport, just to move around in a city, there's actually a whole ecosystem of different actors and organizations required to make that transport system happen across all its dimensions. Or if you went to Brussels and you saw the European institutions, and actually there's a whole ecosystem around them of consultancies, of news agencies, of NGOs and advocacy groups, and HR departments and so forth to make that whole thing work because they're very complex systems. So that's what we're talking about. And we're talking about building those and developing those. And why would we be interested in that? We're interested because those sorts of things are able to perform very complex functions that no one organization could perform. And that's why we have them. They're essentially very complex, multicellular kind of organisms or networks that are able to perform very complex functions that no bounded single organization can perform. And when we're talking about complex wicked challenges, they're too complex for any organization. So we need one of these ecosystem things, and that's why we talk about it in the context of systems innovation. But building them is challenging and it takes time and it takes big investments and it really requires bringing people together and it requires this nurturing development and so forth. If we look at this one here, didn't happen overnight, right? It took hundreds of thousands or even millions of years to develop this, or a financial system can take, decades or centuries to develop. And that's kind of what we're doing. So it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a quick fix. It's not a solution to anything. It's about growing an infrastructure that will one day be able to have the capacity to do things that none of the actors themselves could do. And that's what we're trying to do because we often find ourselves in this world over here where we have a complex challenge. There's lots of organizations and we break it up into lots of projects and there's a lot of each organization thinking it has the solution, but none of them do because it's too complex. And we're trying to get to this place. We're able to put them together synergistically. Instead of them all recreating the wheel and competing, can we put them together synergistically so that they can work together towards a higher level function and actually address that challenge? And bringing something new into the world, bringing something very complex and new into the world. If we think about, um, the grids, the electric grids in most nations, if we take in Germany or in the Netherlands or the UK or France, they all need to change and adapt and develop whole new capacities to deal with the demands from electric vehicles, from shifting to electric-based energy system. They have to build battery storage capacity. They have to build ability to integrate um, offshore wind turbines and different forms of uh, renewable energy sources that fluctuate over time and ability to trade them and so forth. So that's a whole new ability that network needs, and it's going to require different actors working together to build that over time. Is that clear to everyone, this idea of an ecosystem, why we're doing it? Any questions so far? Any comments about ecosystems? Let's maybe just start this question here. If you're on the robot, please join me here. Let's just take 1 minute to post up a sticky. Why would an individual organization wish to be part of an innovation ecosystem? What value would they get from it? And if you just grab a sticky there on the side here, drop it down and type up your answer. That's a very important question because at the end of the day, they typically don't have to be part of these things. And we're going to have to figure out a reason and a value proposition as to why they want to be part of it. If we can't figure that out, no one's going to want to join. So let's take a minute to work on that one. Yeah, let's take a look here. To oh, our board's gone a bit funny. I'll just move that away. And what did you come up with here to connect? When the problem is too complex or incomprehensible for one organization or individual, to create value, they cannot deliver on their own, be part of sharing bigger being part of something bigger, giving meaning to work, they might actually be part of an intervention that works, understanding other perspectives better. Wicked problems can't be solved by one single solution. A systemic approach is necessary to get multiple perspectives, to gain a worldview, to create sustainable, holistic change in order to get a systemic solution to a wicked challenge. To access and mobilize resources, join forces to influence other actors, to look at shared goals, trade-offs, become aware of the limits of fragmented project solution approaches to complex challenges. Okay, okay, very good. I think you're all very intelligent. You're understanding the idea here. Well, here's another little quote from Mark Ventresca. He's a ecosystem builder, a professor at Oxford, and he says the elements of new opportunities, the elements of new combinations are around. They're available to us. It just takes putting them together in new and different kinds of ways. And this is the systems building skill. So that's interesting. The elements of opportunity are all around us, and it just requires us pulling them together in new kinds of ways. And that's the skill we're trying to work on. This ability to see opportunities and to be able to bring together the right parts and put them together in the right way that creates value for them so that they'll want to be part of this and creates value for the whole in terms of whatever we're trying to achieve and do, and to iterate and develop and grow that over time to make it generative and regenerative so it doesn't fall to pieces in 6 months or a year, but it actually grows and evolves like this ecosystem, right? Somehow nature and the universe figured out how to create a system that actually builds upon it, right, itself through evolution and managed to get these very complex systems, the trees and these organisms like bears and deer and so forth. So we've got to develop these kinds of things, and that's quite a challenging activity indeed. And it's trying to skill we're trying to develop. And it requires systems thinking, right? We've got to be able to look at the whole and not just the parts, and not, in this series, we started off with the systems thinking so that we can move away from linear solutions. We didn't think, oh, we can fix this energy transition just with this one technology, but actually we need to work, across whole networks, across multiple dimensions of the network and put it together in synergistic ways. And that's what we're trying to do here. Okay, very good. So to show you one of those, we worked with our London hub with another organization on mapping the ecosystem. So it's just the mapping stage, trying to visualize what's going on. So this one was about climate tech in the UK. And we did a map of the different organizations here. We actually did a workshop and brought them together so that they could share what they knew. It was about 30 or 40 people here from different organizations, and they shared some data plus what we had and so forth. And we did a bit of a map. Maybe you know this application, it's Kumu, and we broke it out into these different areas, whether they're investors or corporates or research or so on and so forth. And you can see here there are all the organizations working on climate here in the UK, and some of them are at the intersection of different areas. And that was a start for us to try and help understand what's going on. It's almost always a key stage in the process. You need to first define what are you trying to do? What is this ecosystem? What's the purpose you're trying to address? We'll be doing that when we move to our canvas. That's almost always the first stage. If there's no coherent answer to what's this ecosystem about, what's it doing, well, then you need to go back and figure that out because no one's going to want to be part of it. So this one, we said, okay, it's about the climate tech organizations here in the UK. How can we understand them and bring together and then develop and grow them? What are the challenges that we need to address and so forth? These are key questions. But it starts with the purpose and the narrative and the name and the vision and so forth. And then you want to do your mapping of the actors like this. So when we start a hub in Barcelona or Berlin or Sweden, First thing we do is what's the purpose? The second thing we do is a map of what are the organizations and individuals in this location and how are they interrelated? So map out the organizations, different areas they're working in, and the people associated with them, and so forth. So that's that. Hopefully, it gives you a little glimpse into that stage of the process. You can take another look. You've got the link there, so you can always click on it if you so wish. I'm going to stay going and talk about this systems entrepreneur. So to build these ecosystems takes entrepreneurship. And we've heard a bit about that word, entrepreneurship. An entrepreneur is someone, it's an activity where we try to bring something new into the world, create something new. We bring things together to create a business, a product, and we bring it to market. And it has to create value if we're going to survive. And someone needs to buy that product if we're going to be successful. So that's entrepreneurship. And it's a challenging endeavor in and of itself. But then we've got systems entrepreneurship. Now, this is the creation of new functional value networks. So it's not just one startup, it's not just one product, it's actually a network that we're trying to get set up and it needs to be functional. And we're trying to integrate different parts and align them, different parts across the system, so that they can perform some sort of function and generate value as a collective. And as I say, it has to create value for them and for the whole system. So it's a system in terms of parts and whole, and they have to interrelate and work together as they're a function and adapt and evolve over time. And the systems entrepreneur is the person who goes about developing and growing those kinds of networks. Um, and here are some of the roles that you need to do. I kind of touched upon some. You need to be able to create, you need to be able to see opportunities. That's why are you doing this in the first place? What's the purpose? What's the identity and the narrative that you're bringing people together around? Um, and what's the opportunity you're going to try and realize together? What's the opportunity? And here's a good question. You touched upon it before in those stickies. What's the thing we could do together that we can't do individually? Because that's what's going to encourage people to be part of this. If it's just the sum of the parts, it's not really going to work. So, what can we do together that we can't do as individuals? Is a great, and what is that opportunity, that big opportunity? And it should inspire people. It should be like, wow, we can do that together. If we could actually organize ourselves and get together, that would be really exciting. And then you're going to stand a chance of them actually engaging. So you have to attract members to this. I'm going to lock my board down. You have to be able to sell a vision and an opportunity that's compelling, that people desire and want. It's attainable, and it's also something they identify with. Going back to that climate tech ecosystem in the UK, those organizations have got to say, yeah, I'm part of that. That's who I am. That's who I want to be. And there's an opportunity here if we work together to attract funding or whatever else it is that we couldn't do on our own. And I want to be part of this. And there's this opportunity we could get together. The entrepreneur, the systems entrepreneur, needs to also then create the structure within which they're going to work. So it's yes, I like what you're creating. I like the opportunity. I want to be part of it. How do I be part of it? So there's got to be this journey for people to be involved. You've got to create the right structure, the right kind of roles, and the right process to take them for them to activate this ecosystem, right? So it's, yeah, I want to be part of it. Great. What comes next? Well, we're going to bring people together for workshops over a period of time for them to figure out how to collaborate or whatever it is. And then through that process, that program, we're going to start building the capacity for this ecosystem. Could be things around raising awareness around it, connecting people through conferences and meetups. Could be learning programs or finding ways to collaborate, running labs and so forth to address specific challenges. And that is a bit about ecosystem building. It's a bit like this. You got all these people, and you got to create something in the center here that actually speaks to all of them. And sometimes they're a bit fussy and they say, oh, I don't like the look of that, or it sounds a bit like that. I don't want to talk to those people, so on and so forth. So, how can you create a value proposition, an opportunity that's so compelling and attractive that they really want to be part of this? And I keep on using this word value because it's actually core to it, right? This is not a normal organization. We can tell people what to do. You probably don't have vast amounts of money or anything like this. You've got to figure out ways to really attract them and create value for them in a sustainable way, and then they'll want to be part of it. And that's really what's going to hold it together. That's very much your success is very much going to depend upon that. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea of some of the challenges here. Um, what do you think are some of the most important skills and abilities needed to do this sort of work? Maybe we'll take 2 minutes to have a think about that. I just want you to, play with this so that you're starting to think about the challenges and skills you'd need to go about doing it. Okay, we're back. I'd love to hear from you people. Mr. Green here, or Mrs. Green, who's this one? Listening and holding space. Anybody like to tell us a bit more about this? Humility to let the purpose evolve.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep,
Hello.
Majid. Yep.
Yeah, I'm Mr. Green. So,
Okay.
yeah, listening and holding space. So yeah, being able to listen to other people's views, as in actually listen to them, um, and then holding space is taking the time to actually let the idea settle and to consider it because we can be quick to respond or refute based on our presuppositions. And so holding space is about taking a moment to just let the idea settle and seeing if there's a perspective that we haven't considered.
Yeah, that's great. Going back here again, because this is kind of the reality, right? You've got your perspective and you think, you're right and you kind of seeing the world like that. But in reality, there's lots of other perspectives here, and you're going to have to listen to them and you're going to have to hear them and hear what they're saying, where they're coming from, and what's of value to them. Or else, again, they're not going to get involved and they can walk away whenever they want. So if you're not listening, you're never going to hear it, and you're probably just going to impose your logic on it when it may not be right for them. So the deeper you listen, the better you can hear what they're saying and iterate and potentially start to create something that's really working for them and working for many actors, and then holding the space. That's what you're doing really in this job as an ecosystem builder. As a facilitator, you're holding space in a workshop, in a gathering, but as an ecosystem builder, again, you're just holding space, but it's on a larger kind of scale over a longer period of time. Okay, anyone else up here? What is this, purple or pink? Building a joint culture that aligns. Okay, great. Love to hear about this. Ilya?
Yeah, that's me. Um, yeah, I was thinking also of innovation labs. I've been working before, right? It's bringing people together, but you have to have like an overarching culture or values that align all these peoples. Otherwise, they, yeah, like you just said, they just step out again. I think culture is important to create a sense of belonging and actually make people act.
Yeah, the mobilizing actors. Is there anything you can say about that?
Yeah, I think it was more of a brainstorm, one led to the other.
Mm,
So I think they might be aligned. So if you have a joint culture and people feel they belong, and then you have to yeah incentivize them really to get to act, right? I mean, it's not a party where everybody, I mean, we have programs, so we need to actually start doing things. We had also members of the network joining, and they said, they were really attracted to the culture because it was hip and happening, etc. But at the end of the day, they didn't do their what they said they would do.
mm,
Yeah, that's not really helpful. So then I think it's all about creating a joint purpose together with a culture, and then get to work, get to do it, and see how it builds out in the day-to-day practice and get the
mm,
results and the feedback.
mm. And this point, connecting different perspectives. I mean, connecting is also important because you say about people belonging to it and all of this, but if they just connect with you or it, then that's a pretty fragile connection. If you start connection between them, if you can say
Yeah.
you have got a connection with you, when you get together and go and talk to each other, and then you also are connected to you, and let's go and talk to them. Over time, they can build this, sense of connection with the whole thing rather than just with you, with the leadership of the lab, right?
Right. You don't want to be the single point of failure, so to say. So not
Mm,
everything centralized. So it
mm,
would be great. We had like different startup teams visiting each other, for learning sessions, etc. So yeah, I can very much relate to the concept of facilitating. You're facilitating a lot in this space. Yeah, so
great.
maybe to get to yeah, maybe self-mobilizing network,
Mm,
right? At the end
mm.
of the day.
But it doesn't happen straight away, right? It takes time,
No,
all of this. That's the thing about it, isn't it? That's why it's not the most immediate solution our politicians and our leaders choose, because it doesn't, deliver results within the next quarter or the next political cycle. It takes time, doesn't it? It's growing something. Yeah.
it takes time. It also has to do with trust, and I think hence again the culture and the values, right?
Mm,
We're in all this together, and we have a level of trust. But I absolutely agree. But I think it's also the fun part, right? Building it together and getting the level of,
mm.
well, I would say, yeah, also, joy and, um, well, it's an interesting
But
process.
But you do have the challenge. You talked about the kind of tragedy of the commons. I don't know if you know that idea. It's just, people do need to contribute, but it's quite, in the beginning, it can be a very weak equilibrium. Like everyone, it's so easily someone cannot contribute, and then others feel they don't need to contribute, and the whole thing starts to fall to pieces. So it's actually core to this kind of equilibrium where you're trying to builds people's ability to contribute, and everybody contributes, so you're all working together, right? And that doesn't happen right at the beginning. Often at the beginning, like I find I have to do most of the work, or you have to, put a lot in, and others only put a very little bit in, and you maybe have to be okay with that because it's the only way of getting it off the ground, right? But if you stay iterating and building that and showing people, look, others are contributing and you can contribute, and this is creating value, and they get that feedback loop. So I've contributed something, and now I'm getting value back. And if I contribute more, I can get more value. And if you start to build that, you can get somewhere. But definitely, you've got to invest in it. Someone has to make a big investment at the beginning because it's difficult to get lots of people to make an investment together, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the show and tell, what you say, is very important at the beginning, giving basically the feedback and what do you say, the proof that it actually is working and starts to delivering. But at least, I think initiatives are brought to light and people are acting on it. That's important. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Ilya, for sharing that. So let's stay going. Ability to navigate conflict and different opinions. Anybody want to talk about that? Or this one here, empathy, authority. Interesting combinations. Cecilia. Cecilia, you with us? Do you want to tell us about this?
Sorry, I think it's me.
Yep.
Yes, Cecilia. Yes. Yes, I think from my experience, these kind of features are really important to be able to build an ecosystem, because the leaders who try to gather key actors need to be recognized among the community. They need also some personal characteristics, human characteristics that make the community trust them. So I wrote empathy, authority within the community, connections, because at the end they need to have their own network to begin with for this ecosystem building. Leadership and agency. I think if you have also agency in the topic you are going to build on, it helps a lot as well.
What do we mean by agency?
Well, I mean, you build an ecosystem normally related to a specific topic, domain, objective, no? If the people who try to be or are called to be ecosystem builders have authority, have agency in this regard, are recognized, they have a much easier path in front of them that people who don't have this kind of attributes, this kind of agency, meaning knowledge of the field, etc.
Yeah, so it is a kind of a leadership role, isn't it? This ecosystem building, and you're trying to create an attractor, right? That attracts people to a new way of working together. And as you say, it's difficult to do that without well, one thing that I've recognized is that having someone who's well known or even like famous in some sense, that can really help because it attracts people. They're attractors, right? They're going to bring people in. Um, and having these other attributes, definitely empathy and connections is super important. But the interesting thing is that, as we know, over time, it has to become its own thing. It has to become its own ego. It can't just remain this person. So although they need to start it and it requires their abilities and their investment, there has to be this journey where they're transitioning to the others doing it themselves, right? So
Exactly.
yeah. Cool. Leadership is definitely part of it, as you say. Okay, let's stay going. Clear vision, storytelling, conflict, conviction, sorry, curiosity, leadership. Anybody want to talk about this? Sudhi?
Yes. I mean, for me, I'm thinking about how you start it. So you need to have obviously a clear vision because you need to know where you want to go if you want to bring people with you. So for me, it's the first one, and also the conviction. Because if you don't have it from the beginning, how are you gonna manage to do all of this? I agree a lot with Majid when he said being able to hold space and yeah, curiosity, because it's all the different point of views that you need to bring with you to create this synergy, I think.
Yeah, I mean the clear vision, visions, they don't just drop out of nowhere, do they? They have to be developed and refined over time. So yeah, you need the vision, but it takes time to refine that, and definitely the communication side of it. So often in the beginning, it's not really a fully formed vision, is it? And you got to get started before you seek perfection. So I think it's often you have an idea of what you want to create and you're able to communicate it, but it takes time to get clear about it and refine it and iterate and so forth. A conviction, I'd use the word commitment is the word I use. It's super important because the thing I find is you have to make an investment in this thing, and it doesn't go anywhere without investments. Like if you think about traditional startup ecosystems, well, you always have this investment going in. Well, you often have the investment going in, typically of money, but it can also be the founders who are just trying to investing huge amounts of time and energy because they're very committed to it, right? Without commitment, you say conviction. I guess they're pretty similar words, but or conviction leads to commitment. Commitment is what says, I'm going to stay investing in this thing, even if there are much better opportunities all around it, because there normally are. You're trying to grow something new that's not working yet. So without conviction and commitment, you're not going to get investment, and nothing can really grow. A new thing can't grow and mature without investment. So very important. Anything else here? Collaboration, willingness to engage with different perspectives, ability to get others interested, creativity, futures thinking, seeing opportunities. Anybody want to talk about this one?
It was mine. So you have to be a storyteller, like Celine said, but you also have to sell an idea of the better future, so you can get others to the boat and start rowing. So
Yeah, opportunities is interesting too, isn't
yeah,
it? They're seeing how do we see opportunities? What does that actually take? Yeah, is it a thing?
you make people believe that you can make a change. It's an opportunity. So there are many people who are pessimistic, but when you join them together and give them, or they give each other new ideas, so they can see a better future. So it's a start.
Takes certain optimism too, doesn't it? It's like they talk a lot in like the startup community about just you just got to be super optimistic because the chances you're going to survive are so small, right? That everyone else is saying, nah, it's not going to work. Whereas you're just ridiculously optimistic, and that optimism is the only thing that's going to keep you going and give you a chance, really. Yeah. Okay, dokie. Great points there. Let's well, we have it here. Perseverance, deep understanding of the fields, people skill. Okay, deep understanding of the fields. Anybody want to talk about this? How important is that? Maria.
Hello.
Yep.
Yes. So I think it's important. You don't need to know every detail, but I think you have to have developed some sensitivity as to how the system behaves so that you know how to build the structure or at least envision a potential structure, but also along the way you have to be sensitive enough as to how the system behaves as it develops and how you may have to adjust in order to form the
Yep.
system and push the system towards the direction you
Yeah.
and
Great.
yeah, I have in mind, do Brunello Meadows quote that you have to dance enough
Mm.
with the system so that you, in a way, have an insight of or have a sense, something that maybe cannot even be shown by the data or, an analysis of data, but it's something that you sense.
Yeah.
And that probably takes a lot of practice, or you have to work or dance with the system quite.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, your audio is a little bit quiet, Maria. People are struggling to hear you, but I get your point. So normally what we're doing here would, as I say, you'd be doing this mapping and a lot of research beforehand before you really go into talking to people and so forth, or trying to engage them, I'd say. So curiosity, someone put there, you're not going to do all this research. You're not going to go and talk to these people and do all this without curiosity. So you've got to have that deep understanding of the system, and then you're going to be able to maybe dance with it, as you're saying, Maria. And that's definitely part of it. Okay, I'm going to stay going. Actually, let's just take a look at a video here of an ecosystem. So this is Viable Cities, which is a network, an ecosystem of cities in Sweden who are trying to create climate neutral cities by 2030 with a good life for all within the limits of planetary boundaries. That's their mission. So this is an ecosystem, municipalities, businesses, academia, civil society, government agencies. We work together to create ecological, economically, and socially sustainable cities. And let's take a look at the video here so that we get an idea of this as a form of ecosystem. So here we go. It's just 2 minutes long. Okay, hopefully that gives you a little insight into what we're talking about. It doesn't really deal so much with the workings of the whole thing, but I think it does illustrate the aspect of the narrative that they're trying to tell. They feel they need to tell a story about what the good life looks like in a sustainability context and so forth. So you might like to look into that more. There's a link there, Viable Cities in Sweden. Okay, so a couple more here before we go to a workshop. We've got another 10 minutes or so, and then we're going to move on. So firstly, what are the key aspects of an ecosystem? This is the canvas we're going to be working on. It's a model we developed at SI over the past 5 years or so and put into practice a few times. So the first thing we talked about is the purpose. So that's where we're going to start in the center. When we go to the canvas, we'll be talking about what's the name of this ecosystem? What's the purpose? What's the mission? What is the story you might tell? There are going to be challenges around that. So if we say this is, what could this mission be? Well, let's take the people there, Viable Cities. Their mission was climate sustainable cities by 2030 or whenever it was, 2035, not sure. That's their purpose, and they're obviously trying to tell a story about the good life in that context. To get there, we have to kind of break that down. There's going to be a number of challenges, right? Many of those, including, things like decarbonizing mobility or developing green spaces or education programs, awareness, whatever it is. So there's a number of different challenges around that we want to think about, challenge areas that the actors, themes that the actors are going to work on. We need some actors, right? Who are the actors that need to be part of this? Who are the relevant actors that need to be part of this? We need to think about that. We need to map them out as we've done up there. So this is kind of like challenge mapping here. We're going to place up what are the challenges. Here's actor mapping, the kind I showed you before with the climate London, UK climate tech map. Then there's activities, right? So we have a purpose and mission. We have challenge areas. We're going to engage actors in this. Of course, they need to do something together. So what is the program of activities? And it's not just a random set of things. It needs to, over time, build their capacity, take them to where they want to where we want them to go in terms of growing this ecosystem. So it can be tracks around raising awareness, around learning, around connecting and collaborating, around working together and so forth. And we could have sub-activities in that, right? It could be running programs over the course of a year. We're running 5 workshops around addressing a particular challenge here or learning this particular area that we need to, or developing our vision together, right? They said in that video, we need to help people envision and think about what a good life within planetary boundaries in the city might look like. Or maybe they're running a track based upon that where they're engaging citizens and stakeholders in co-creating that narrative over the course of a year, something like that. And to support all this, we need a platform, which is an infrastructure. It's kind of the core organization that's going to organize and lead all of that. So Viable Cities is an organization itself supporting those 200 organizations or whoever they talked about. So they're going to need things like technology, and they're going to need a team. They're going to need some supporting finance and legal and stuff like this. So that's the platform that's supporting the rest of it. So that's a little model for thinking about different dimensions here. We'll be using it in a minute in our workshop. You'll find some more of the details there. I won't go into it now. We'll talk more in a minute. This final section here is about growing an ecosystem, how they develop over time. So here's a little graphic you might think about. When you normally start, you go into an area, you have a bunch of parts, a bunch of organizations typically, and sometimes they're collaborating or cooperating, or sometimes they're competing. But it's typically pretty fractured. And you need to grow these relationships, these collaborations, these ways of working together, and ultimately a network, a kind of an infrastructure for them to collaborate and work together as kind of a whole organism. And that takes a number of things to grow and develop that. We do need to think about value and the kind of value network that we're creating here. What's the economy? Because this is going to be some kind of an economy, this new system we're growing. So the economic dimension, the value flows, really, it doesn't just have to be money, it can be different forms of value, but it's very important to consider how's that developing and growing over time. How are we evaluating, assessing this thing? If we want to grow it, if we want to invest in it, we need an assessment of what is developing and growing, and is it growing in the right direction or not? And the question of the scaling or growing dynamic, what's actually growing this? What's actually accumulating? How does it build upon itself over time is another key consideration to actually growing these ecosystems. All of this is actually in the guide. So, and we have individual guides on all of that, systemic investing, value networks, and so forth. You'll see them all here. You'll find them on the website if you want to go deeper into that. How are we doing? We've got a few minutes. I had a quick question for you here, actually. How do we know when an innovation ecosystem is successful? What are the results? What does success look like? Let's just take 1 minute to post up some ideas. What do you think it would look like if we're really successful in building a purposeful innovations ecosystem? What would be okay? So multiple projects reaching product market fit. New ecosystem attracts funding and investment, self-sustaining, attractor increasing popularity. When the defined purpose is being achieved, it's all in the definition. Well, yeah, I mean, often there's no real solution. If you talk about an ecosystem for addressing homelessness in your city, that can take a very long time. So I wouldn't be focusing too much on like fixed solutions, thinking like that. But definitely, if we can see, more people having homes and less people on the street, that's definitely going to, be an example of success. You have positive feeling about the results. People say and create together. There is trust, communication flows, and periodic joyful meetings. Okay, wonderful. Joyful meetings. I like that. So when participants become self-organized, sustaining, people show up because participation in the ecosystem reduces uncertainty for them. What does uncertainty mean? Anybody quickly who posted this? Ali?
Yeah, uncertainty I mean, I'm taking a very strictly active inference approach to this, in that it helps them resist entropy. It helps them resist dissolving into into not existing anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
I
over
guess
time, the system develops this kind of shared understanding where the actors anticipate each other more effectively and they make better quality predictions.
Yeah, I mean, the entropy is a good point because ultimately it should enable a better infrastructure for coordination. You're saying here, repeat interactions, smooth coordination, better prediction. So ultimately, it's a way of improving the effectiveness of the coordination at the macro level, not for any individual or particular project, but as you say, the value of it should be seen in. Yeah, now we have a way of working together. We didn't have a way, and it was slow. I used to have to go and talk to every organization, and we didn't know what we're doing. Now we actually have this platform, we have this infrastructure. It's very easy to connect with you. It's very easy to work together. So repeating interactions, smooth coordination. This should be, kind of outcomes we're looking for. Alrighty. So Roma, do you want to do a bit of workshopping?
Yes, sure, Josh. Thank you for presentation so far. Now that we've already looked at the canvas over here, I think we can all hop on the board and co-create in this section. So for the first step, we will think about the purpose. So the challenge is, how might we tackle the loneliness and isolation in a city? That is a bigger challenge, and we need to find out what is the purpose of this ecosystem solving this challenge. So we could take 3 minutes to put some stickies here and put your ideas.
Yeah, so how are you going to communicate to others the purpose and maybe even try to create a name for this ecosystem? So we're just exercising, going through the practice here. How would we communicate the purpose to others in a coherent, compelling way? What might we call it? Shall I put some time on 3 minutes, Roma?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
All right. So I see that a lot of us have already started filling up other boxes as well. Um, I'll start with reading what's in the purpose box here, and there's some really nice names. Next door buddy support, team up together, no one alone, and then nay buddies. So the purpose could be finding meaning together, building spaces for the community, reduce loneliness to improve mental health, physical health, job retention, education. And then I thought of the Unlonely City, but it already seems to exist, but it's a great name. And then, all right, there's something interesting here. Let's create a city where all people are connected, participate, and thrive. Connected cities. Reduced perceived felt loneliness, not only increased interactions, which is increased meaningful repeated social connections, which is intentionally designed spaces where belonging auto emerges, a shift from an events-based approach to a social fabric. So we see some really interesting points here. Would you like to add something to this, Joss?
I like the one in purple down there. Sorry, I like the one in purple just above the red one there. It says because it's kind of speaking to a few different value points: mental health, job retention, education. So I think it's there's some good ones there, but I like that one because it's, when you go and talk to different people, this this purpose of this ecosystem may not necessarily resonate fully with them, but for some of them, it might be jobs, or it might be health, or it might be, education. So I think being able to flesh that out a little bit, how are you going to speak to those different actors in a way that helps them? Because you may need to be getting the schools and the hospitals and all these people on board. Yeah.
Thank you, Jos. Perfect. We can move on to the next part. Actually, we have some of us filling up the challenge spaces, which is homelessness, poor people, loneliness, polarization, breakdown of trust, mental health challenges, maintaining privacy without isolation, social isolation. So I think the way we're understanding challenge here is the real issues. But I think in this context, please correct me, Joss, if I'm wrong. In this space, we say challenge areas are different opportunities that we're trying to develop.
Well, there's sub things that are feeding into this macro thing, right? The main thing is, say, disintegration of society and loneliness, right? So then if we map out around that, we can't necessarily tackle that as a whole, right? How can we think about sub challenges, right? So let's see, what might be an example. Transport actually might be an example, right? Because if we live in a large city and we don't have good transport, we're going to become isolated and separated, So one of the challenge areas might be effectively connecting the city through transportation. Or what would be another challenge area? Maybe in schools, helping children to build meaningful relationships with each other at an early age. That's another challenge area, right? So those sorts of subsystems that we can start to engage people through and challenge as we might be running workshops around, or labs or things like this. Yeah, let's just take a couple of minutes, should we, Rama, and have them think about it?
With this new understanding, let's take 3 minutes and write up some of the challenge areas. this is amazing. Actually, the second round has some really good examples. I could read out some of them. So one is aging support. And then we have intercultural connections. And then crime rates amongst youth, equality of opportunity, values shift challenging high self-orientation, and then social and sports activity for youth, areas that are purely residential with no shared spaces, inaccessible spaces. Example, steps too narrow, steep hills, too loud, not safe for children, not anywhere to go without spending money. This seems like a problem space, a challenge space which can be converted into opportunity. And then urban models prioritizing compact cities with the mixticity of uses in the public space and mixed income housing, social services, proximity of public facilities, offering support. So these are some of the great examples for challenge areas that we can work further on. So for the next part, we will look at who are some of the actors we need to work with in order to start working on those challenge areas. So let's try to find some of the actors here. Like you could pick any of the challenges that you find there in that box and see what actors we could bring together to work on this. Is there anything else, Josh, we must add here?
Nope.
So let's take 3 minutes to do this. Interesting. We have amazing, great number of actors here. So I'm going to quickly read out some of them before we move on to the next part. We have social services, parent school associations, health institutions, school volunteers, sports institutions, and then collapse spaces, And then NGOs, artists, innovation labs, local councils, policymakers, local government, town planners, individuals and families. We have we have social housing, architects and planning departments, and then social services, youth, elderly, minorities, local businesses, funding bodies. And okay, now that we have so many actors, uh, assuming we already have all these actors on board right now to address the challenge area, let's look at some of the activities that we can do along with them in this activity space. I think it's kind of covered. Yeah. So for the activity tracks, let's come up with some of the activities and events or projects that you can take up together with them. Is there anything else, Joss, for this part?
No, it's really what are they going to do together to co-learn and co-create around this challenge? Yeah. What are the kind of tracks, the activities they need to be done?
Mhm. So we take 3 minutes to ideate on the spot.
I think maybe think of programs like series of activities, because one-off things are not gonna get us there, right? What are the kind of outcomes that we need? What are the activities that we need to be doing to take us in that direction over time?
All right, so I'm going to read out some of these activities we have here. So we have fundraising, health information, weekly food festival calendar, art camps, sport activities, walk-in neighborly cafes, and then third spaces, 24-hour open safe spaces or shelters, and then all public spaces fully wheelchair accessible and safe for everyone, system of home visits for housebound individuals, and then living labs, citizen participation to policy decision, education programs to involve citizens in the idea of be a community, And then on this side, we have surveys and interviews in neighborhoods to understand depth of situation, and then sensing sessions at education institutions at all levels, intergenerational urban gardens, and then systems mapping activities, design pop-ups for participation. And then we have convene social rituals, interest-based micro communities, intergenerational exchanges, and then spatial activation, convene an open space event to vision, connect, map the system they are all part of. So these are some of the really interesting ideas.
I made also try to create programs to structure, because there's so many different things you could do, and it's going to seem a bit random to people if they just get a message like there's this event and then there's that one, and it's not necessarily leading anywhere. So that's the reason why you want to create a program. So you say, actually, we want to build capacity around learning, or we want to build, spaces for people to co-create. And that's a program with a series. And then next month, we're going to work on this particular thing in a lab, and the month after that. So it's to give it some structure and to give it a direction and help people make sense in their head. Oh, in this hub, in this ecosystem, there's 4 tracks of activities we do here. And this is why we do them, because we want to get there in our capacity and so forth, our awareness and learning and all of that. And then within that and then a program within that next month, we'll be focusing on this, the month after like that. And that helps people, structure and make sense and have a sense of progress to it also.
That's interesting. Shall we move on to the last part before we wrap? Okay, so the last part is about platform. What kind of platform, online platform and offline, or an offline open space that you may require to make this ecosystem, to support this ecosystem and make these activities happen. So just reading out from what is on the canvas, what is the supporting platform? Finally, we need to think about the technology platform we will use to organize and communicate. Along with this, define the value model, how we assess the ecosystem's development and the shared knowledge base, and set of tools needed by members. So how can we kind of make this happen for real? Let's take 3 minutes and ideate on that.
Yeah, it's all of the organizational infrastructure that you think we're going to need to support this. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody, for your inputs here. I'm going to read out some of the sticky notes. We have people behind platforms, and we have different actors organized in 4 tracks: community build from all the volunteers, local representatives, dashboard of impact made, and then schools, platforms, city hall websites, local stores, inclusive place to share impact offline, and then third spaces. We need interconnectivity among the municipal platforms that track citizens' issues on a single platform. And then we have municipal platform that can connect to the city social offerings like festivals and sports, can be assessed through mental health reports of loneliness decreasing. And then participation must be possible without using a particular app or technology. And then meeting people where they are, low friction, lightweight, accessible group information, and then designing for repeat interaction and participation. We also have bulletin boards, newsletters, WhatsApp, easy access, and Discord free. This is some of the parts that go into creating this organization, this platform. We are almost towards the end of the workshop. If you have any questions about this framework, about what we did in the workshop, or we learned in the presentation part, I would welcome you to join the next session we have, Learning Series Meetup, where we'll unpack a lot of questions you might have about ecosystem building module. So with that, I would request Joss to summarize, and then after him, I can wrap up. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Rama. Hopefully that was helpful in just helping you think through the different dimensions of this. And of course, when it comes to challenges, you'd be kind of mapping those out and clustering them around here, and then thinking about what actors you bring together and what activities you do to help them address those challenges and move forwards over time. But hopefully it helps you think about those different dimensions. So what did we cover today? We were talking about ecosystem building, and we talked about natural and human ecosystems and how they're pretty similar in many ways, and it's all these entities. They are part of an overall network that is, in some sense, working together or interdependent in fulfilling some overall function. This thing's processing all that energy coming from the sun through a biological system, and we are working to fulfill functions like the one we just saw there, right? About addressing loneliness in the city. Well, that's a function that a network of actors need to work together around in a synergistic way. And that's what we're trying to create, trying to move away from projectization, as they call it, which we see a lot of. We have a big challenge and we chop it up into lots of projects, and lots of organizations try to address it and recreate the wheel, and money and resources and time and energy get diffused across multiple wheels that are being recreated really, when actually we need to be putting those wheels together in synergistic ways. And then we can have much more effective coordination at the macro level, right? That's the problem here. This is not coordinated at all. So we're all pulling on one part of the elephant, like we talked about when we talk about systems thinking, the elephant, and addressing that part with our solution, but it's not getting us very far. If we want to actually, help this elephant move forwards, we're going to have to understand it, but then we're going to have to get this coordination at a broader scale. And that's what we're trying to achieve with ecosystem building. And we talked about some of the challenges of that, of what an ecosystem builder does in terms of creating this narrative, this vision, this identity, seeing the opportunities, attracting members, creating the right structures and pathways for them to be involved and co-create value over time as they progress, and being able to really engage these diverse set of actors and listening to them and really hearing their needs and being able to engage them in the right way that creates value for them in the whole, and helps it all move forwards. And ultimately, trying to build up from a disconnected, siloed set of actors and individuals to a more integrated, collaborative. We didn't talk too much about collaboration, but it's really key to it, a whole infrastructure network for collaborating around a challenge. And we talked about the different dimensions of that, including the purpose and mission and the actors and the challenges and the program of activities and the supporting infrastructure. And hopefully that gives you a little model, a little schema for you to think about the ecosystems you might be developing. But thank you very much for joining, and going to wrap up there. Look forward to hopefully seeing you next week in the learning meetup. Yeah, Roma, do you want to take us to the end?
Yeah, I thought you just wrapped up with okay. All right. So we have a next session, which is learning series, last meetup, which is on May 6th. You could click here and RSVP there, join us there. And then if you want to read up all the material that you saw today, it's accessible here. You can click on this button. And then if you've missed any sessions earlier, all the sessions are here. So you could click any of these and watch the session. And if you have any resources about ecosystem building to share with the community, feel free to drop it here so everybody could benefit from those resources. And lastly, would love to hear your feedback, how useful was today's session between 0 and 10, 10 being I found it extremely relevant and engaging. So you could use the dot voting method to let us know. And if you have any feedback, any comments for us, please feel free to put that in the sticky here. And hope to see you next week in the meetup, and have a great rest of the day.
Take care, guys. It's good seeing you. Yeah, see you next time.